I grew up in a 7-story apartment building in a mid-sized city. I'll tell you the number. Building 14, Block C. I won't tell you the city. It doesn't matter which city. What happened there could happen in any building, any city, anywhere people live, stacked on top of each other in small boxes with thin walls and one shared stairwell. We lived on the 5th floor. My parents, my older sister Lena, and me. We moved in when I was 6, and I lived there until I left for university at 18. 12 years in that building. I know it the way you know something you've lived inside. Not just its layout, but its sounds, its rhythms, the specific quality of the silence at 3 a.m., when even the insomniacs have finally surrendered. And I know its rule. Every building has things people don't talk about explicitly. The neighbor on the 2nd floor, who you never see but hear crying on Sunday nights. The smell from apartment 3B that has no explanation. The elevator that everyone takes to the 6th floor, but nobody takes to the basement. Not because there's a rule, but because there's a feeling. Building 14 had something older than feelings. It had the rule about the 3rd knock. I absorbed it young, the way I absorbed everything important about that building, through behavior, through watching, through the things adults didn't say. What I knew by the time I was 8 was this. If you heard knocking at your door at night, late, past midnight, you counted the knocks. 1 knock. Not unusual. Could be anything. A neighbor with an emergency? Someone on the wrong floor. 2 knocks. Wait. Don't open immediately. Listen for a voice. If there was a voice you knew, a voice belonging to a person from the building, you opened. 3 knocks. You didn't open the door. Not for any reason. Not if the knocking continued. Not if a voice came after. Because a voice could come after, and it would sound like someone you knew, and you still didn't open the door. You turned off your lights. You moved away from the door. You waited. I asked my father about it when I was 8. He said, "This building is old. Some buildings accumulate things over time. People come and go, and sometimes something stays. It doesn't come in unless you let it in. So you don't let it in." I said, "What does it want?" He said, "I don't know, Samir. Nobody who opened the door has been able to tell us." Something about the way he said that, the specific past tense of it, that has been made me understand without further explanation that people had opened the door, and that those people were not available to describe the experience. I didn't ask again. For 11 years, nothing happened. I heard knocking at our door 3 times in all those years. Once it was our neighbor, Mrs. Gawley, who had locked herself out at 11 p.m. 1 knock, her voice immediately after. My father opened. Once it was a drunk stranger on the wrong floor. 2 knocks. My father listened at the door. No voice. Waited. Heard the elevator. Went to sleep. Once, I was 14, home alone. My parents had a dinner that had run late. 3 knocks at our door at 1 a.m. I turned off my bedroom light. I sat on the floor against the bed. The knocking happened again. 3 knocks, the same interval, the same even wait. Then silence. Then a sound outside the door that I will not describe in detail except to say that it was not footsteps walking away, and it was not silence. It was something else. Something I had no reference point for and have never found adequate language for in the 27 years since. It lasted about 2 minutes. Then it stopped. I sat on the floor until my parents came home at midnight. My father knocked twice and said my name, and I opened the door. He looked at my face, and he knew. He didn't ask me about it that night. In the morning, he asked if I was all right. I said yes. He put his hand on my shoulder, and that was the end of it. The Nassers lived on the 3rd floor. They had moved into the building 3 years before this happened. A couple, no children, both of them professionals in their 30s. Nice people. Private in the way people from outside are sometimes private when they move into a building that has its own internal culture. Friendly, but not fully absorbed. They knew about the rule. I believe that completely. Everyone in the building knew about the rule. Mr. Farouk on the ground floor made a point of telling new residents in his own quiet way. I'd seen him do it with other families. A brief conversation in the stairwell. Nothing alarming, just making sure. But knowing a rule and believing in a rule are different things, and the Nassers, I think, knew the rule without believing in it. It was January. I was 17. I know the month because of the cold in the stairwell that night. Building 14 had heating that worked inconsistently, and in January the stairwell was cold enough that you could see your breath. I woke at 1:30 a.m., not to knocking, not to any sound I could identify. I just woke, which happened to me sometimes in that building. A light sleep, a sensitivity to the building sounds that I'd developed over years. I lay in the dark and listened. The building was quiet. Then from below, from the 3rd floor, I thought, I heard 3 knocks, not on my door. Somewhere below me, through the floor and ceiling of this old building where sound traveled in unexpected ways. 3 even knocks. I sat up. I heard nothing for a moment. Then I heard a door open. I have gone over this next part many times. I have tried to be honest with myself about what I heard and what I interpreted and where the line between those things was. I'll tell you what I'm certain of. I heard a door open on a lower floor. I heard Mr. Nasser's voice. I knew his voice well enough to identify it. Say something. Not words I could make out. A greeting, maybe. The tone of someone addressing a person at their door. Silence. Then Mrs. Nasser's voice from further inside the apartment, asking a question. Then Mr. Nasser again, his voice slightly different now. A different register. Not alarmed exactly, but changed. The way a voice changes when something is slightly wrong, and you haven't decided yet whether to be alarmed. Then a sound I could not categorize. Not a voice. Not a physical impact. Something that fell outside the range of sounds I'd grown up hearing in that building. In any building. Anywhere. Then Mrs. Nasser screamed. Once. A single scream. Short. Cut off. Not cut off by anything I heard. Just stopping. Like a sound that ends because the person making it has stopped making it, rather than because it's been interrupted. Then complete silence. I was at my parents' door in seconds. My father was already awake. He'd heard it. He was sitting on the edge of his bed. He said, "Don't go into the stairwell." I said, "I heard them." He said, "Samir, don't go into the stairwell." He picked up the phone and called Mr. Farouk on the ground floor. I don't know what they said. My father spoke quietly, and I only caught pieces of it. He said the Nassers. He said, "Third knock?" He said yes. He hung up. He said, "Mr. Farouk is calling the police." I said, "We have to go down there." My father looked at me, and I have never forgotten his face in that moment. He was 51 years old, a steady man, someone who had raised 2 children in that building and maintained the rules and kept us safe for as long as I could remember. He looked genuinely afraid. He said, "We wait until morning, Samir. That's what we do." I said, "If they're hurt?" He said, "If we open that stairwell door, we don't know what's still out there. We don't know how long it stays." I looked at him. He said, "We wait." I sat in the hallway outside my parents' room until 5 a.m. The building was completely silent. No sounds from below, no sounds from the stairwell, nothing from outside the apartment door. Complete silence. At 5 a.m., my father said it was enough time. He and Mr. Farouk went to the 3rd floor together. I stayed on the 5th. My mother stood in the hallway with her hand on my arm. I heard them knock on the Nasser's door. Once. Twice. The door opened on its own, hadn't been fully closed. A long silence from below, then my father's voice calling for Mr. Nasser, then for Mrs. Nasser, then my father's footsteps, fast, going back to the stairwell. He came upstairs. He came into the apartment, and he stood in the hallway, and my mother looked at him, and he shook his head. He said, "They're not there." I said, "What?" He said, "The apartment is empty. Everything is normal. Dishes in the drying rack, coats on the hooks. A cup of tea on the counter, still warm." He paused. 2 cups. He looked at the floor. He said, "They're just not there. The police came at 7 a.m. They found the same thing my father had found. 2 cups of tea. Coats and shoes still in the apartment. Both phones on the kitchen table. No signs of struggle. No signs of departure. No signs of anything except 2 people who had been in their apartment and then were not. The investigation lasted 3 months. Nothing was found. They were never found. I left for university 8 months later. I came back twice to visit my parents, and each time I climbed the stairs past the 3rd floor quickly and didn't look at the Nasser's door, which had a new family in it now. And I stayed the minimum amount of time and left. My parents moved out when I was 24. My father had retired, and they wanted somewhere smaller and quieter, and I think, though he never said this, he had been wanting to leave since that January. I helped them move. On the last day, carrying the last boxes down the stairwell, I passed the 3rd floor landing. I stopped. The door to what had been the Nasser's apartment was a perfectly ordinary door. Different family now, a child's drawing taped to it. Completely normal. I stood there for a moment. I thought about Mr. Nasser opening his door, the greeting in his voice, the thing he'd seen standing in his doorway at 1:30 a.m. that had knocked 3 times and waited. I thought about the tea still warm on the counter. I picked up my boxes and went downstairs and didn't look back. I'm 41 now. I live in a house. I chose a house specifically when my wife and I were looking. Not an apartment. Not a building with a shared stairwell. Not a place where sound travels through floors and ceilings and you absorb the rules of the building through years of careful listening. My wife asked me once why I was so against apartments. I said I'd grown up in one and I preferred more space. She accepted that. At night, in our house, if there's a knock at the door after midnight, which has happened a handful of times over the years, wrong address or a car problem or a neighbor's emergency, I count. I always count. 1 knock. I approach the door carefully. 2 knocks. I listen for a voice I know before I touch the handle. 3 knocks. I turn off the lights. I move away from the door. I wait. My wife has asked me about this behavior twice. I've told her it's just how I was raised. Some habits don't leave you. Some habits shouldn't.